Well, you had trouble with Steven Seagal on a film you did together, correct?
Yeah, something like that. He hurt, a few people on the set purposely. And it's like, if you're acting and we're working together, I'm trusting you not to, take advantage of the situation and vice versa, And he put one guy's, a stunt guy put his head through the window. He was just supposed to act like he hit him. He actually grabbed the guy and pushed his head through the window, and the one move where he has my arms behind my back, and we're both supposed to drop to the ground at the same time. On cue, I drop and he stays up, dislocated my shoulder.
Really?
But what goes around comes around, and he ended up hurting himself on the set and was out for 2 weeks. So.
Oh, good.
Can you think of one?
Michael Jai White.
Can I laugh in your face?
Really?
Yes.
When someone can outshine you at your own game, it hits deep. And now, Michael Jai White is finally spilling the real tea on what went down between him and Steven Seagal. And whew, it's piping hot.
You want me to do a martial art fight scene with you but I'm fighting on the side of racist white people.
Michael's never hidden his dislike for Steven, but this time, he's letting it all out. In a recent interview, he straight up dragged Seagal for being unprofessional, arrogant, and just plain nasty. But that's not even the craziest part. Michael also dropped a bomb saying Steven acted like a straight-up racist who thought he was better than everyone around him. Yeah, Michael did not hold back, and fans were living for the drama. This beef has been brewing for years, and it's one of the wildest feuds in Hollywood action movie history. But what exactly did Michael reveal? And wait, is it true Steven dipped out of the US? 'Cause he's got a federal case on him? And those racist allegations?
Hollywood tough guy, in your opinion. You accept it, of course.
When you say tough guy, do you mean martial artist or just tough guy?
I mean, Steven, for real. If he was on the street and there was a situation, you wanted this Hollywood guy by your side because he could defend himself. It's that hard to think of a legit one?
Can you think of one?
Michael Jai White.
Can I laugh in your face?
Really?
Yes.
Let's get into it. This clash between Seagal and Michael Jai White goes way back to the early 2000s. And trust, it wasn't about friendship falling apart. It was about Seagal's trash behavior, both on set and off. Dude had a rep for being impossible to work with, and Michael just had enough. Now it's all blowing up, with Michael exposing how Steven nearly wrecked his whole career when he was at his peak. Steven Seagal used to be one of the most feared names in action films. He built a whole career off acting tough. But behind the scenes, he was taking that tough guy image way too far. Meanwhile, Michael Jai White? He's the real deal. A legit martial artist, a respected tournament fighter, and someone all the top names in combat sports give props to. Despite their differences, they actually worked together a few times. Seagal even invited Michael to star in and help direct some of his projects. But then came 2012, and Seagal threw major shade. In an interview, when asked if he thought Michael was a great fighter, Seagal laughed in the man's face, then flat out said he didn't respect Michael's career. Not even a little. Honestly, no one was shocked. Steven Seagal has always had a habit of tearing down other fighters just to hype himself up.
Steven Seagal was so horrible on such a scale. It was such a huge scale of terribleness that it wasn't undeniable by anyone who was there. I remember at one point he locked himself in this dressing room because he said that you're saying Hans and Franz could beat me up and I'm not coming out of the dressing room until you change the sketch. It was really legendary, crazy.
But the fact that he disrespected someone he personally invited to work on his films, that hit different. It completely flipped the vibe between him and Michael Jai White, turning any mutual respect into straight-up tension. Back in the day, Seagal's career was unstoppable. For a while, action movie fans were acting like he was the second coming of Bruce Lee. As a young dude, Steven even packed his bags and flew to Japan to get deeper into martial arts culture. He wasn't just playing around either. He earned a legit black belt in Aikido, a martial art that's all about blending with your opponent's energy and using minimal force to control them. It's supposed to be peaceful, disciplined, all about keeping that inner rage in check. But ironically, Seagal clearly didn't get that memo. He married Miko Fujitani, whose family was straight-up martial arts royalty in Japan. Through them, he ended up running their Aikido dojo, making him the first American ever to teach at a traditional Aikido school in Japan. That was a huge deal. Eventually, he headed back to the US and opened his own dojo in Los Angeles, still focused on Aikido. But it wasn't until 1988 that Seagal hit the big screen with his debut film, Above the Law, the first American action flick to feature Aikido-style fighting. The movie blew up, and suddenly Seagal was being talked about in the same breath as Arnold Schwarzenegger, Bruce Willis, and Stallone.
Yeah, that wasn't easy. That was, you know, yeah, I did a movie with him called Executive Decision.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
oh yeah, all three of you saw it. and the first day we get together for rehearsal with the actors and the director, he comes in, I'm in command. What I say is law. You disagree? And I started cracking. I was like, I thought he was kidding. We were just hanging out.
Yeah.
And he Aikido'd me against a brick wall. Pow! Knocked all the air out of me. I was like, what? What?
Then came Under Siege in 1992. Seagal played Casey Ryback, a Navy SEAL turned cook who takes down a crew of hijackers on a battleship. It was a massive hit and locked in his spot as a Hollywood action king. The film was so big, it even got a sequel in '95. Under Siege 2, Dark Territory dropped, but by then, the cracks in Steven Seagal's reputation were already showing. Around that same time, word started spreading like wildfire in Hollywood about how unbearable he was to work with. Back in '91, he got invited to host an episode of Saturday Night Live, but let's just say it was a total disaster. Longtime SNL producer Lorne Michaels, plus cast members David Spade and Tim Meadows, all labeled Seagal the worst host the show ever had. He reportedly disrespected writers, clashed with the cast, and even refused to do a Hans and Franz skit just because the characters once joked about beating him up. But it gets even weirder. Way weirder. Julia Sweeney, another cast member, later exposed one of Seagal's sketch ideas, and it was straight up disturbing. The plot involved a woman who had just been assaulted, and instead of helping her, the therapist she visits tries to sleep with her. Like, what was he even thinking? People weren't just weirded out. They were disturbed. That's when the mask started slipping. Behind the fake Zen warrior image, folks saw Seagal for what he really was. A bully who thought he could say whatever he wanted and disrespect whoever he pleased. And that toxic energy followed him around, not just on comedy sets, but even among the action movie elite and real martial arts legends.
The problem I had when I really flared toward him is that he was hurting the stunt guys. And one of my very good friends, a guy named James Liu, and another friend named Nils Stewart, who were nice people, but he would make it a point to like kind of even off camera do things like wrench their arms. He actually tore Nils's bicep for no reason. Just to, and
Well, how was he afterwards? Was he apologetic or?
The next day he was.
Oh, but right after he was.
He walked around like he was untouchable, putting down real fighters, mocking his co-stars, and acting like no one could match him. But when it came time to prove it, Seagal was always missing in action. But here's the truth. In Hollywood, you can only step on so many toes before the phone stops ringing. And that's exactly what happened. Seagal might have been decent at throwing kicks, but when it came to actual acting, meh. After Under Siege, everything started crashing. From Fire Down Below to The Glimmer Man, flop after flop dragged his name down. By 2001, his star power was on life support. That's when Exit Wounds came into play, Seagal's last big shot at a comeback. The movie had all the right ingredients: a solid plot, major producers, a heavy budget, and a cast stacked with stars like DMX and Isaiah Washington. And yes, Seagal brought in the man himself, martial arts powerhouse Michael Jai White. Michael was, and still is, respected by elite athletes from every combat sport across the globe. Michael Jai White wasn't just an action star. He was the real deal, a true athlete's athlete. He wasn't just throwing punches on screen, he was behind the scenes too, working with top Hollywood producers to choreograph fight scenes that looked raw and real. Slowly but surely, his name was buzzing louder in the action world. So when Exit Wounds was lined up, it had blockbuster written all over it. But of course, Steven Seagal's ego just had to ruin it. By that point, everyone in the industry knew the truth. Seagal was a nightmare to work with, especially for stunt performers. He'd go off script and hit way harder than necessary. Not just a little extra, we're talking hospital-level injuries. Stunt guys dreaded working with him because it wasn't just a job anymore, it was a risk. One of the worst moments came in 2004 on the set of On Deadly Ground. Seagal went totally off the script during a fight scene with Vaco Thorson, a respected actor and seasoned stuntman. Instead of pulling the punch like professionals do, Steven blasted him in the throat. Full force! Thorson was injured on the spot. Another time, he slammed actor John Leguizamo against a brick wall because John laughed when Steven claimed he was in charge. Leguizamo said it himself. Seagal couldn't tell the difference between acting tough on camera and acting wild in real life. He really thought he was some superhero off set too. And during Exit Wounds, it was more of the same. Or worse. The tension was thick. People didn't even want to be around Seagal, let alone work with him. Cast, crew, everyone was either walking on eggshells or straight up fed up with his bullying. He wouldn't listen to directions, refused to follow camera setups, and refused to do anything that made him look weak, like running on screen. Even comedian Tom Arnold couldn't stand working with him. But then, things took a dark and tragic turn. While filming a high-risk vehicle stunt, veteran stuntman Chris Lamon suffered a horrific accident. He fell and cracked his head. This wasn't some rookie. Lamon had worked on plenty of films before. But something went terribly wrong that day. He was rushed to the hospital, but the injuries were too severe. Sadly, he didn't survive. Imagine the fear that gripped the stunt team after that. One of their own was gone, and the atmosphere on set turned ice cold. Every move became 10 times scarier. You'd think after all the chaos, Steven Seagal would finally check himself and act like a decent human being. But nope. He kept pushing people to their limits. Literally, what should have been routine stunt scenes turned into injury zones, thanks to Steven doing whatever he wanted. Even DMX caught the heat. Word is, Steven twisted his arm during a scene and refused to follow the script. That move sent DMX crashing down hard. The man was furious. By the time filming was wrapping up, everyone was done with Seagal. Like they were counting the minutes until he was off set for good. The final scene? It was supposed to be epic. A showdown between Michael Jai White and Seagal. Hero versus villain. Real martial artist versus fake tough guy. The whole movie had been building toward this clash. But behind the scenes, things got real interesting. Michael later spilled that. During those final days, crew members and actors came to him, one by one, whispering that they wouldn't mind if he just dropped Seagal. Seriously, folks were begging Michael to teach him a lesson. Not just in the scene, but in real life. They wanted Seagal humbled, bruised, and maybe even sent home early. And let's be real, Michael could have ended him if he wanted to. The man's a world-respected martial artist, trained and proven. Seagal, at that point, just a washed-up star still acting like he ran the place. Michael had seen him bully too many people, and whatever respect he might have had, gone. But Michael took the high road. He stayed professional and kept it clean. Still, the final fight scene? Trash. Seagal had a clause in his contract that nobody could actually hit him, so Michael wasn't even allowed to go full speed. What was supposed to be a jaw-dropping battle turned into a weak, clunky mess. Then came 2012. And Steven had the nerve to laugh in an interview when asked if Michael Jai White was a great fighter. For Michael, that moment said it all. He realized Seagal was just a small-minded, insecure dude who couldn't handle being around real talent. Steven Seagal's career? It never bounced back. After burning bridges all over Hollywood, he faded into the background, now making low-budget, over-the-top action flicks for random studios in Thailand. But trust? It gets messier. There's been serious buzz that Seagal might be dodging legal problems in the US, which could explain why he's been hiding out in Russia for years now. Yup. In case you missed it, Vladimir Putin granted Seagal Russian citizenship back in November 2016. But this wasn't random. Seagal had been showing major love to Putin for years, riding hard on a pro-Putin media wave. He started claiming he had Russian roots and leaned all in once Hollywood gave him the cold shoulder. Seagal even started calling Putin his brother and praised him as one of the greatest world leaders alive. And get this, Putin actually gave Seagal Russian citizenship and later awarded him an Order of Friendship, saying it was for his contributions to global culture and humanitarian cooperation. But let's be real, it wasn't just about culture. Steven wasn't just fangirling. He got deep into Russian propaganda, especially once the war in Ukraine popped off. He backed Russia hard and helped create multiple films pushing a narrative that made Russians look like heroes while making Ukrainians seem like villains. One of his latest pro-Russia films? It's called In the Name of Justice. In it, Seagal visits war-torn areas in Ukraine, but instead of showing the real suffering, the movie tries to flip the blame. It suggests Ukrainians deserved what happened to them. And that's not all. In a 2020 clip, Seagal actually called Ukrainians Nazis, blaming them for starting the war. He's been doubling down ever since, jumping on every chance to spin things in Russia's favor. So now, with all this heat on his name, a failed Hollywood career, and legal whispers floating around, it looks like Steven Seagal found a new stage. Not in action movies, but in international politics and propaganda. Steven Seagal caught major heat for all of this, especially for the propaganda and his wild comments. People didn't just call him out. They straight up labeled him racist. But wait, there's more. Word on the street is that Seagal's also got some serious tax trouble back in the States, like pages worth. And if there's one thing we all know, Uncle Sam don't play when it comes to taxes, so why else would Steven suddenly bounce to Russia? That's right, Russia has no extradition treaty with the US. Sounds a lot like someone running from something, doesn't it? And this wasn't just a vacation. Seagal packed up everything and made a whole new life in Russia. Folks say he's even been selling off all his US property, little by little, like he knows he's not coming back. Meanwhile, Michael Jai White, he never looked at Seagal the same after all that mess. In fact, in a recent interview, Michael roasted him, saying Seagal's acting was so weak, anyone's dad could do those stiff fight scenes. Brutal. Seagal tried to patch things up later. He reached out and even apologized. But Michael wasn't falling for that. He knew Seagal was only doing it to save face. It was never about making things right. It was about damage control. At this point, Michael doesn't even have to say much. Seagal keeps making himself look worse with every move he makes. Honestly, for someone who once ruled the action movie world, this is a rough way to fade out. If you're still here, make sure to like, subscribe, and drop a comment below. What do you think about Steven Seagal's fall from grace? Hit that bell so you don't miss what's coming next, and I'll catch you in the next one.